If you're a lawyer looking to grow your law firm through online marketing, you've come to the right place. My name is Matt Post.
And I'm Asha Madavi.
And this is the SEM Dynamics Lawyer Marketing Podcast, episode 6, I believe. And what are we talking about today?
So today's our topic is working with third-party lead sources. So we often see that there are new companies coming out, and there's some well-established companies that have been around for a while that reach out to law firms and offer them to generate them leads. So they pay per lead or per call, most likely. Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into working and making sure it actually works and you get ROI from your investment. So we're going to go into details what to look for and what to avoid.
Okay, so what type of leads? I mean, are these going to be phone calls, web, form submissions, both? What leads are available out there that can be expected, and what's the pros and cons of both?
Yeah. So it really depends on who you're working with. Most common is a hot phone call transfer. So they will get the person on the phone and then they will transfer the call to the law firm. If the lawyer doesn't pick up, depending on the arrangement, they might call the other law firm that's next on the list.
Okay.
But there are some that will send you form submissions. Sometimes they'll send you an email with a new lead and you got a call and get a person on the phone.
So I would imagine with the paper lead, when we were talking about that in regards to a phone call, you have to make sure that, the number one, that somebody's answering that call. I mean, are you charged if you don't answer?
Once again, it really depends on your contract. Generally, you shouldn't be charged. And there are some contracts that you only get charged if you talk to that person that's calling you for a specific time frame. So for example, if you're on the phone for more than 2 minutes, you'll get charged for the lead. That gives you a chance to see if it's qualified, something you're looking for, before continue the conversation.
So these are all negotiable items.
Yeah, and there's some companies with very strict rules of how they work, and others you might want to negotiate.
Okay, which companies which one should people be talking to?
I think there's a lot out there. I think the one that's been established for a while is Walker Advertising, but there's other ones that I think I can't remember the name.
Yeah, there's I know there's a handful of I know there's a lot of smaller companies that are doing this, and it's whether or not they are delivering the quantity of calls. I think that's been an issue that I've seen in the past, where the quantity of calls becomes a problem for many of these lead generation, because you're looking at a real micro segment of a market, right? It's not a lead that comes in throughout the entire United States. As an attorney, you want a specific practice area in a specific location. Yeah. So fulfillment, I would imagine, would be kind of problematic for some of these companies, because they have to be able to produce a pretty good amount of volume, right?
Yeah, and none of them work. So I just did literally Google search for lawyer leads. Yeah. So going through the ads for legal leads.
I've used them.
Martindale Avo does lead gen.
Yeah.
And there's some that I've never even heard of. It says broadphonepartners.com. Never heard of them. Let's see. Legal Match, live attorney leads, Service Direct, and as I mentioned, Walker Advertising. I see their ad listing as well. Encore leads. I can keep going. There's a ton of them out there. So I haven't used them, so I can't tell you which one's worth using or not. I've used them long time ago.
Yeah.
But
I think Walker's the most established one, right? But that's also for PI. They don't do anything other than PI, do they?
I'm not sure if they do.
I know they do PI, but
yeah. And I think depending on what practice areas you do, there might be some companies that are more established in that field. For example, like mass tours, there's like a few huge companies that all they do is specialize in mass tour leads, and they actually do a really good job at it. If you have a good intake setup, and if you do a really good job, like you know how to handle those leads, so you can actually sign them up.
Okay. Now intake, is that, I mean, intake's essentially that's your sales team, right? It's a sales team for an attorney. But what is that unique to personal injury? I mean, I know a lot of personal injury companies, as you grow, you need somebody that's going to always be answering the phone, and the lawyer is going to be in court often. But outside of PI, is that still utilized?
Yeah, I especially with the bigger law firms, your phones are gonna ring, and you're gonna need to be able to figure out who's calling and whether they're a potential client or not. If you're gonna have your attorneys do it, and a lot of law firms do have attorneys take turns and answer those phones.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, there's not gonna be much follow-up. So if you're really spending a lot of money in advertising, you need that follow-up to happen. So if you get a good call and like, oh, let me call you back, or like, oh, call me at 3:00, and the attorney is busy, or they don't pick up and there's no call back, like you're gonna lose on that lead. They're gonna call someone else.
Yeah, and I know that we've built some lead follow-up systems where you have a drip system through email and text, a combination of the two. We put together the outline for the lawyers, and it's really helpful in staying top of mind, and also, I mean, let's be honest, any person who is tasked, well, not any person, but the majority of people who are tasked to continuously follow up with leads that may be non-responsive, it becomes like it's wearing, the morale of that employee starts to go down because it's a grind, right? And why do that when you have an automated system do it for you? You know that automated system is never going to delay or come up with an excuse as to why not. I know personally for me, like my follow-up is always, I don't want to bother this person. I don't want to bother this person. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I'm quite certain that a lot of people think that they're bugging somebody. But at the end of the day, whenever I have people respond back, it's been, oh, I'm sorry, I've been really busy, I appreciate the follow-up. But still, every time I think I'm bothering somebody. So for me, an automated system is amazing to have. And I'd imagine that might be something that would be useful to have in place as a lawyer if you're going into this lead gen arena.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Automated system is great, but it does not replace having a person calling. Like that is not an option. You need someone who's going to be available, who's going to stick to the schedule and actually answer the phone when it calls. I know it's a novel idea, but a lot of phone calls go to voicemail, especially with smaller law firms. You need to pick up the phone, and even more important, call people back. If they are not sure, if they're busy, if they're deciding, keep calling, keep following up. That is what's going to make them decide to go with you versus someone else, among other things, of course. But being responsive and calling them is huge.
Yeah, I'm going to Google. I know there's a stat out there. I'm going to see if I can find it while we're talking here. It's for the phone response time for a lawyer, and I know it's amazingly horrific, and where it is an overwhelming number. It takes like days to return a phone call on average, and I'm going to see if it's if I can find it real quick. I don't see it, but I'm going to look for it. And I know it's really bad. I came across it about a month ago, and I was like, "What? That can't be true." And then I thought about it. I was like, "Yeah, that's probably true."
And then we have had some experiences when it came for consulting. We're like, "Oh, you guys don't answer their phone. Well, that's the problem number one."
And the thing is, they're busy, so it's hard. I mean, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You're trying to grow your law firm, but you don't have the time to answer the phone because you're doing your job. You're in court, you're handling whatever matter is in front of you. So I think you're absolutely right. And, you need some type of intake system, even if it's, a secretary that is there to always answer the phone. And I know it's best to have somebody that's, that they're dedicated and they're trained just in dealing with phone calls. But a second best is have somebody as a fallback.
Don't let it go. You can train them too.
What's up?
You can train them. Like if you have one person dedicated to your phones, you can train them on how to handle different types of situations. so you avoid any problems. So it doesn't have to go directly to an attorney, which a lot of law firms prefer doing, but it can be transferred once the call is screened.
Well, and there's also, I mean, Google LSA. They do both, right? So LSA stands for, was it local search
Local
ads?
service ads.
Service ads. I was gonna mess that up. Glad. See, local service ads. So local service ads, they'll do the hot transfer, the phone call, and also the web form, right? They do the web form leads.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that's relatively new. I mean, it's been around for probably under a year in the legal industry. They were testing other industries. But and I bring this up because if you are not responsive and you don't answer your phone enough, you're going to stop getting leads from Google.
Yeah.
If you're paying for LSAs, I'm not saying Google's not going to negatively affect your organic ranking. Like, this is a totally different beast aside from organic, right? This is a specific, this is a type of ad. Yeah, this is a specific type of ad. But if you're paying for leads and you want leads and you're trying to scale and Google will not supply those leads, right? Response rate's a big thing there.
Yeah, they are. And if they will even tell you, like, if you don't answer your phone, if you get missed calls, it goes to voicemail, you are not going to be getting as many phone calls, and they will start lowering and lowering that number. It's really hard to get back to the volume. Almost impossible, to be honest. Maybe they will make some adjustments in the future, but as of right now, once you lose the trust, it's really hard to get it back.
Yeah. And you can do, I know with, I think it's 4 legal leads. It might be another one. Anyways, and I believe with LSAs, you can dispute a bad lead, right? A bad phone call.
You can dispute them with any company. So let's be honest.
Okay.
And that is something that actually
I know you have a lot more experience in this than I mean, this is why.
Yeah. So let's have a company ABC. Let's pretend that's your lead provider. Yep. Okay. So when you are giving them a test, like, let's say, like, I want to see what the quality of the leads they're getting. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have a contract. In an ideal world, we want it to be a phone call transfer because you're way more likely to get actually, you're going to talk to someone. If it's a form submission, you might not ever get hold of them. Yeah. Those leads might be cheaper, but I think quality is more important. So we'll try to do a phone call. If we can do like a couple minutes, great. But when you get those calls, take notes. And it's really, really important because if you take notes, you'll know the quality of the leads. If they're not getting signed up, find like track of why. Have they hired another attorney? Or are they not getting back to you anymore? Like, know what's going on so that you can make some determinations whether those are good leads, whether the company is actually providing you something that you're able to retain, or whether it's just keeping your team busy with a bunch of phone calls that really turn into nothing. And if you get calls that are not relevant to you, or for example, for like PI, there's no injuries, or the accident happened 3 years ago, obviously, like, if they charge you for that, you can dispute and you can try to get your money back. So at least you lower your costs for things that are not relevant.
Now, will Google dock you or be less likely to show your ad if you are known as a person who's consistently disputing calls?
So are we talking about LSA now, right?
LSA.
Okay, so let's switch back to LSA. With LSA, they shouldn't. However, I've been kind of careful.
They do.
So
what Google should do and what they do are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, as far as they say, no.
Okay. But
so if you get like a bunch, I will obviously dispute them. But if I get like 3 in a row, maybe I'll like dispute 2 and leave the third one in.
Yeah. So they claim that they don't, but
yeah, but
you notice that they do.
they've actually been so much better now than before, and actually like on their own saying, oh yeah, we're not charging for this lead. In the beginning, that was not, I mean, they kind of did that, but now they are so great at it. Like I really have not had to dispute a lot of phone calls anymore.
So they're recording them then?
I'm not sure like whether they have a system, they're listening specific words. I have no idea, but they're getting much better.
Because I know some of the lead gen, you get a copy of the recording of the call after it's
So
made.
with LSA, you don't. But when we're switching back to lead providers, they're like private companies. With some you do, with others you don't. However, I highly, highly suggest that you record your own phone calls. And the reason you want to do that is, especially if you want to dispute those calls, you have an audio copy to send that to the company, be like, hey, like this is not, like if I'm doing employment law and you're sending me like workers' comp leads and charging me for it, and they say, no, they say it's employment, and you like listen to this phone call, it's not.
Yeah. My downside with recorded calls that I absolutely hate is there's a delay in the line.
Yes. And maybe once you have the relationship with the company that there's no issues, you don't have to record. But in the beginning, I recommend that everyone records their calls, especially you are going to make a big financial commitment and you really know how it's going to play out. So you need to kind of protect yourself. Also, side note, do research on the company. If they're brand new, if they just came up 6 months ago, probably don't work with them, because if they don't deliver, they'll take your money and run. How are you going to get it back?
So the payment method is usually going to be what, like you're going to buy X amount ahead of time?
Yeah, so you usually prepay. So you say like you prepay for, let's say 25 calls.
Yeah. Is Google LSA the same way?
No. For LSA, you basically tell Google what your budget is. So it only charges you when the call is made, but you tell them what your budget, so you get charged. So it just with Google charge with their like periods.
Okay. And I mean, I know I'm going back and forth between LSA. I see LSA as just another online lead provider.
I mean, it's a lead provider that you get to Google control in a lot more ways. But when we're talking about lead providers, I'm really thinking of like a private company that they run their own ads, and like some of the fears that I've heard people talk about, but those are they will send same lead to multiple lawyers.
Yeah.
Make sure in their contract that doesn't happen. If it does, whoever talks to them first might not get it. I mean, it just becomes too much of a mess.
I've heard of where it's, I'm sorry, and correct me if I'm wrong, where they send out the call to like 10 different or however many different lawyers at the same time, and whoever answers first. Is that
some do that? Yeah. Some do like round robin. So like they have kind of like, let's say 3 law firms to work with, and they'll take turns. So whoever picked up next time, they're gonna have to wait until the other to pick up. So it really depends on what their system looks like.
Okay. So it's important to ask them how they determine who gets what phone call.
Yes.
Okay.
And I also like ask like how are they getting their ads? They might not tell you.
Yeah.
But they could kind of tell you the quality of the ads. Or not the ads, the quality of the leads.
Well, I mean, I don't know anybody. I mean, I would imagine, I'm guessing that any lead provider who's selling you leads isn't going to tell you that their leads are bad.
Of course they're not, but that's when you ask like, hey, what kind of like marketing are you doing? Yeah. And one of the other reasons you want to find out exactly what they're doing is because you could be responsible for what they write on the page. If they write something on their page that is not true, and the ad goes to you, like someone can come after you, say like, hey, you misrepresented.
So you would be also liable potentially, and disclaimer, since attorneys are listening to this, we are not lawyers, we're not giving you legal advice, right? But you could be held potentially liable for what's on the landing page where you received the phone call, even though the attorney doesn't have ownership of that page. And I asked that for terms of like bar violations.
Yeah. And here's the thing, double check, like different states might be different. Yeah. But I always, when we used to do that, I always wanted to know, I need to see what the page looks like. especially some companies will use the attorney's names, images, and if they do that, you definitely need to know
Yeah.
what it says. And then when if they don't, sometimes they'll put the name at the footer because it's one of the compliances that they have. They have to say who they're advertising for. Therefore, you're automatically, once again, responsible for what's on the page.
Well, and also, that there, I believe, whatever disclaimers, I would imagine there's specific disclaimers that are required for, state of California, their telephone consumer like privacy acts and things of that sort for telecommunication calls.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know there's special disclaimers that you have to have on those.
Yeah, the hope. And here's the thing, if you're working with a company like out of state, they might not know what your state requirements are. So
True.
do your homework.
Yeah. Yep. I'm looking up what that is in California. I know it exists. And again, I have the loudest keyboard, so everyone's gonna hear me type. That's what happens. Yeah, you essentially have to give like permission for them to call, especially if it's outbound call. Like if you're going to get the notification and as the attorney, you're going to get the outbound call because it's a web lead on the website, you have to have somewhere there's a disclaimer that gives permission to the attorney to make that phone call. Again, not a lawyer, but this is what I hear. And I know that attorneys are putting disclaimers on websites for this. So if you don't have this, if you don't have this on your own website, and also if you don't have this on a landing page where you're receiving leads from, it may be a red flag of something that you want to make sure that you're covered. Talk to a compliance attorney, somebody, your state bar, call somebody who knows.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And going back to like how the companies are getting the leads, one of the reasons you want to know is a lot of them will do online advertising, and that's what we're talking about, like what the page looks like. The rest of them are more likely going to do the commercial, like TV ads, which is very, very common and works really well for those companies if they do a good job. Not all, of course. So you kind of want to understand that way when people are talking to you, you already have the mindset like, hey, they might not know they're calling my firm, or maybe they already know who they're calling. So you might handle the calls differently.
Well, if you are getting in web form leads, like so switch over from a phone lead, if you are getting a web form lead, what should be in place there? I mean, an automated email follow-up, like that should be like number one, right?
Well, I think number one should be call back. Like the second you get the lead, you should have it go to multiple people and they have someone responsible to call it literally right away. And what usually happens when you have multiple people is someone will reply all and be like, calling. And that way, you know, someone's actually calling this lead, because if no one calling, then whoever is in charge gotta get talk to their staff, because calling right away is what's going to separate you from the other competitors, especially if the person's shopping around. Most people don't just submit one form. They submit one form, they go to the next site. So you want to catch them before they go to the next site.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, people don't end their experience immediately. Oh, I registered for one attorney. Hopefully they're the one that I want, and they're going to take the case.
Yeah, no one sits around and waits. And here's the thing, if you don't get hold of them right away, don't wait 3 days to call them back. Don't even, I mean, I hope you call them back, first of all. But generally, call them again in like 20 minutes. And if not, they call them again in a couple of hours. And I know this is what we talk about. We don't want to be annoying, but this, if you don't get hold of them like within the first 3 days, you might as well like lost it. I mean, you still should follow and call because sometimes you might still get them on the phone, but you have to be aggressive. You are paying for the lead, be aggressive.
And I think, oh, great, let's just assume you get a hold of them in 5 days and they say, oh, I've already found an attorney, blah, 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 blah. Again, you check with your bar, make sure you can do this, but I would, say, hey, would you be offended if I followed up with you in about a month to make sure that everything was going okay with that attorney? Because that attorney might suck. They may have chosen the wrong attorney and you're the right attorney for this. But you don't know who they chose. Who they chose can be absolutely horrible. You still want to be in line with that. Put it on your calendar, give them a call back in a month. You're going to show up. You're probably going to be the only attorney that's going to do this, by the way. And you're going to show that you care. And usually after a month, that attorney, if they suck, that'll come to light and they'll be like, oh, they're not communicative. There's issues, whatever's happening, they're going to be upset. And then you can be the knight in shining armor that's going to show up and say, hey, I told you a month ago that I was going to give you a follow-up call, just seeing how things are going. How's that attorney treating you? Are you being taken care of? In a worst case scenario, you will be one of the few lawyers that will actually follow up and have that extra level of communication. And you're probably going to come out looking in a better position than their attorney that they hired.
Yeah.
So it's just good branding. It's good for your company. I would do that. Just say, would you be offended if, and then follow up in a month.
Yeah. Great way to get a couple more cases.
Yeah. I mean,
you already pay for the lead.
Yeah. If you make thousands of dollars per case, and what's a phone call?
Yeah.
Your
it
ROI is huge.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to go back really quick. So when I talk about following with leads on being aggressive, something I've found is there are some companies that let's say, hey, call the lead, they don't pick up, call the next day, or call like towards the end of the day, thinking, oh, maybe they're at work. And I found that there's a huge correlation with that type of follow-up, that a lot of good leads will end up signing with someone else by that point.
Yeah.
So do some math, try to call right away. Like if depending on the time the lead came in, if it came in say in the morning, try to get it before work. Try to get it maybe on their lunch break. So try to kind of like think of like when are the people more likely to answer the phone, and set your team. So maybe have your team go to lunch break a little bit earlier, or a little later in the day. And when most people go to lunch, take the time to actually call those leads and follow up and try to get them on the phone.
Or set the follow-up to be in varying time. I mean, especially at first, like you're saying, you would call in the morning, call it, lunch, call after 5 o'clock, whatever, but vary the time. And then I would follow up a missed phone call with either a text message or an email, depending on the information you have.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the thing. I get phone calls all the time and I look at it like, spam. This is somebody from the IRS because my social security has been compromised. Man, no way. Because I don't recognize the phone call, so I don't answer. I'm sure a lot of people do that because that's the age we're living in now. Is every other call is a spammer. So the text will be like, hey, this is Masha from ABC Law Firm, just giving you a follow-up call. You reached out to us regarding a matter. Give me a call back when you get a chance. At least they know next time. They're like, oh yeah, I remember this phone call. I remember this phone number, even if they can't answer then. So do that extra follow-up. Again, it's an extra 5 seconds. You're going to make thousands of dollars doing it. The ROI on 5 seconds over, 4 or 5 touches on average? Yeah. 20 seconds, $10,000.
Yeah. And those text message will get you at least more cases, you guys. And here's the thing. Those lead gen companies can only do so much. Their job is to get you qualified leads. Your job is to close those leads.
Yeah.
So you both have to work together to make a profitable arrangement. Yeah. If they don't give you qualified leads, no matter how much you try, what you do, it's not going to work. But if they give you at least some good leads and you guys just drop the ball, that's on you. So make sure you guys work together so you can actually both benefit from this.
Yeah. And there was a study, and I've referred to this a few times, and it was years ago. And it was that at that time, millennials were, they took a multiple choices, what they would rather do, A or B, to make these decisions as to pain points. And they would rather do this versus that, right? And one of the polls that was concluded was that millennial would rather clean their bathroom with their own toothbrush as opposed to make a phone call to a customer service line. So, I think they're trying to do outreach, and that's the whole thing. Like, they may only want to talk via text message. They may not just answer their phone. They may not do it. That's not what they do. They text. So look for alternative ways to communicate. If you have the email address, do that. Hit them all 3 ways, because you don't know what their preferred method of communication is. Now, that lead did come in through a phone call, so you're hoping that that's how they prefer to communicate, but it could be just a high pressure situation where it's the only way that at that time they were able to communicate, and their preference is another format. You can close them. You have a higher chance of closing them on their preferred format of communication.
Yeah, for
Definitely. Crazy stat though, would rather clean a bathroom with their own toothbrush than call customer
sure.
service. I would rather call customer service, but I'm also an oldie moldy individual. I am aged like a fine wine. So cost expectations, right? How much leads? What are they going to cost?
It really depends. So I don't even go into cost, but I do want to mention that you guys can negotiate. And I think that's something a lot of people kind of don't think about. But whenever you're working with those companies, you can negotiate everything.
Yep.
Not LSAs, of course, but like private companies. We can negotiate the price. We can negotiate what qualifies lead and what doesn't. How things are screened, how long gonna takes them to give you money back if it's not qualified. Are they gonna give you money back? Are they gonna send you more leads? What happens if their leads they're sending you are still not qualified? Think that out, put that in the contract, and then make sure the company actually has a history so they don't just take your money and run.
Yep.
And I know it sounds really scary, but generally, those companies are around for a long time. The ones that are, they're around because they're doing a good job. Generally, but you still have to test them. You never know. They could be going through a slow period, so you need to be very careful and record your phone calls. Make sure you're on point, and if something's wrong, tell them right away. Don't wait till the end of the contract and tell them none of your leads were good. If you get like 5 calls and all of them are not qualified, tell them right away. Don't wait till 5 calls. Let them know, work with them. It's supposed to be a partnership.
It's a very good point. Yeah. Now, are there, I think we're coming towards the end of our time. Is there any additional information that's important? And we want to make sure that we get out there for lawyers to get the best leads, lowest cost, and what to expect.
Yeah. I think the last point with any marketing, track your costs and pay attention. Like, what is your actual like cost per new client? Because let's say there's some companies that will charge you more per lead. It could be worth it. So whenever you test things, make sure you track how many people you actually retain. So you know exactly what's going on.
Okay, so and that's a good point. The cheapest lead is not the best lead. So if you have to pay twice as much for a lead, but they close at a significantly higher rate, then the lead is that much better. Then definitely take that into consideration. It's a good point. So cool. Well, that is the time for this month. We will be chatting with you next month. And thanks for stopping by, and go out, get some leads, engage with some of these lead companies, and like Masha was saying, you can negotiate everything, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye, guys.